I have to admit, maybe a large part because of the book, that the last 14 months has been quite busy. Uh, Also, I have an agreement with Ronald Corey for the next 3 years. Well, there's already a year behind me, but that I will, at his request, represent Canadian in certain events. As an example, the last one was a few weeks ago when I went to Shawinigan Falls because they renamed the arena Jacques Plante. And Ronald called me. He said, Jean, is there any other guy than you who really know Jacques Plante in our organization? So those are the type of work. I replaced him one noon. There were a large convention in Montreal, and there were a conflict in his schedule, so I did the speech on his behalf and on behalf of the Canadian. Those are the type of work in this little
that you'll be doing.
contract.
But I mean, I guess for all Canadians, or many Canadians, I should say, people will say that they feel at home next to a hockey rink or inside an arena, and that must be true for yourself.
Well, don't forget, this goes back when you're 5 or 6 years old, starting behind a house, at school, play for the town. In Victoriaville, we were fortunate enough to have a covered arena in the 40s, and we were raised near an arena. I was raised in school near the church. The Sacred Heart Brothers took care of our education and sport. So going to an arena for us is more than part of our life.
If you weren't such a good player, do you think you would have become a priest?
I don't really think so. I was an altar boy for 3 or 4 years because, well, like I said, our house on Notre Dame Street in Victoriaville is gone because now it's the lawn of the near the church. So we were so close that almost every morning when we had visiting priests that I was an altar boy. But I don't really think so. My father worked for, at that time, Shawinigan Water and Power, and for 2 summers I worked for them as a student's work, and I don't really think so.
I mean, you grew up in an interesting time, especially for someone to be such a highly visible personality in the province of Quebec. You grew up basically through the Quiet Revolution. Were you comfortable with those changes, and was it a difficult time to be a high-profile personality in this province?
I never really experienced any serious or any problems. I've always, like I said, if you don't want any problem, tell the truth. Everybody, I think, knows where I stand. I've always expressed, starting from my time in Quebec City, that I was earning as much as a Canadian was offering me. I've always, and I think it's a secret to have a good relation with the press, which has lasted now for 46, 47 years. I said, tell them the truth. And that's what I was telling members of the press. Give them an honest answer.
For a long time, you've been considered Mr. Hockey, Mr. Class, or the definition of class. Is that something you like, and did you ever want people to know that, well, you know, I have a mean side too, and I have things about my character that perhaps aren't perfect?
I never really looked for it. It came from not only some of my teammates, but it came from my opponents. But it's always, in a way, nicer to hear than he's a bum. But no, that's my style. That's the way I was brought up. It started at home. My father had a strong principle that he gave me right before I left, and that's the line I follow all along. And I think it turned out to be pretty good. A career can always be better, but it could have been a lot worse. So simple facts, simple line that I follow. And I think that's the easiest way.
I like other people who watch sports and see the great figures in sports. Sometimes, well, we always make heroes of people like you, and we forget that, like anyone else, you can be fragile. And I was surprised to read in the book that in the early '60s, you thought for a time that you'd actually quit, even though you're as
well,
great
I had
a player
a
as
tough
you
time for 2 years. Where the real reason, I don't know. Was I on my way to have a burnout? I worked very hard outside of the game. I had always had at least another job. Started in Quebec, right, for the dairy, for the Laval dairy. And when I came to Montreal, I already been contacted by Molson, and I worked there very hard. After practice, I was at the brewery. 12 o'clock. I used to have lunch with the employees. I've always wore a tie because after practice, I was working at the brewery, and doing all that, after certain numbers of years, maybe it takes a lot out of your system, and you don't really feel it at first, and you have to go through a difficult period, I suppose, to make you realize that this could happen. And that's when I sat down. I remember with Senator Hartland Molson, and he was there last Friday for the launch. He's 88 years old. You still see him behind the bench. He loves the game. And he simply, in his calm way, said, Jean, during the course of a long career, there'll be time where it's impossible to have a 45 years where you won't have a period where it's a little tougher than others. And he was right. And we came back, and we had those late 60s, but it's very successful. And I have a chapter where I say that that team is kind of forgotten.